Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shahid Zahid, and I have the pleasure of being in conversation with Ms. Sherry Rehman. We have a very diverse topic. We're going to talk about critical concerns for Pakistan's future. So this sort of leaves room for discussion of almost everything. But before I begin, Sherry needs no introduction, and I've known Sherry for many years. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her, but let me give you a brief idea. The program said something innocuous like former editor of the Herald, which is correct, factual. But that was over 30 years ago, if I recall.
About 35.
Yes. And she was also before the Herald with a newspaper that died many years ago called The Star, which some of you who are old enough in this room might recall. Most of you will probably never have heard of it. It was a wonderful evening paper that came out of Karachi. So I've known Sherry since those days, since the early days of The Star and the Herald. But let's talk about more recent things. She is someone who founded something called the Jinnah Institute, which many of you have heard of. Excuse me. She's also the president of the Jinnah Institute. The Jinnah Institute was set up, if I recall correct, by Sherry, essentially to encourage the youth of this country and the young people to engage in problems and concerns that are affecting particularly the youth, not just the country, but the youth of this country. She's been ambassador to the US from 2011 to 2013, Pakistan's ambassador to the US, and those, if you recall, were the very, very difficult, the crisis days. She was sort of known as the crisis ambassador. Those were the good old or bad old days of the Haqqani network, exactly. And I use that term guardedly because recently you probably have seen, just I think it was yesterday,
Day before.
Or was it the day before? There was an op-ed piece on the front page of the New York Times by one of the Haqqanis. That's how the world is, how much the world has changed. The New York Times is now publishing op-ed pieces by Haqqani. She's a senator, of course, and the first female opposition leader of the Senate. She's parliamentary leader of the Senate at present. She was also, more importantly, in previous government, the Federal Information Minister. And that is in itself not a big deal because we've had many Federal Information Ministers, but I think in her case, what was particularly relevant was that she's probably the only Federal Information Minister who has resigned from her own government against her own government over what were at that time, I think, threatened media controls. She resigned and they withdrew the threat of media controls. She was, I think, concurrently also Minister for Health, Women's Development and Culture. So she gave up all those four portfolios. She's also been awarded the highest civil award, the Nishan-e-Imtiaz. Is that correct? And she's had several awards, international awards given to her. The Democracy Hero Award, the Freedom Award by the United States. She was named by Foreign Policy magazine as one of the top global thinkers in 2011. Newsweek Pakistan gave her a cover story as Pakistan's most important woman, if I recall correct. Now, given all that, and I've already mentioned the media, maybe we can just sort of jump in head first and talk first about media freedom.
Thank you, Shahid, for that long and generous introduction of a life lived from, I don't know, room to room. But Thank you all and the LLF for doing this, bringing Lahore and Pakistan together to such amazing convenings. They really are convenings. And here we get to air ideas, talk to each other, and actually, in my view, bring our motives and thinking for a call to action. That's what leaders do. I'm not saying I'm one, but that's what we should be looking at, and we'll talk about that. But just briefly on media freedoms. Those are very important in any democratic dispensation to make any accountability or audit of government, of power, and what good journalists do is speak truth to power. That's a cliche that I don't need to dilate on, but given Pakistan's record, and the world actually right now, is a place where freedoms such as media are receding. And this is unfortunate, but the period Shahid spoke about was probably the freest for us in Pakistan, because we just come in after a long interregnum of direct dictatorship, which was Musharraf's rule, when TV stations had been smashed and all that kind of thing. And there was a great deal of sensitivity in the media as well as public, general public, about the state of media freedoms and how important they are. The new channels had just come in. To the younger people here, electronic media was not what it used to be. There was very little social media. So voices had to be amplified through basically the new electronic media, and this was a clear, open, shall we say, pipeline to sharing not just news but opinions that were made on these platforms. So my government actually came in, and I was the information minister, which is a redundant ministry in my view, and I gave that presentation to the Prime Minister in my own ministry that this needs to be shut down to evolve into something else. Because governments here are very poor at messaging intent and creating public outreach for their policies, their initiatives, their big ambitions. Now, it's another thing we don't hear about big ambitions, but, and I just want to say at the outset, I'm not here to do a partisan nitpicking about what's wrong today and what was right yesterday. We are here to unpack issues critical to the future of Pakistan and today. So quickly, those were different days. We felt we could, even the slightest impingement on the curtailment of freedoms, and since I was a spokesperson there, and I said, well, if for 2 days 3 channels have suddenly disappeared to the back of the, what we call channel list or bouquet, then I need to answer for it. And if I can't answer for it, there was no grand plan, there was something going on. Anyhow, I feel that I'm still from the media, I had to make my position felt. I had come from a life of campaigning for before that 5 years with Benazir Bhutto, actually 10 years. And we had clearly, before she died, promised the media that we will not just dismantle all the old laws from General Ayub Khan's, General Zia's, General Musharraf's. We will do that, but we will enhance media freedoms. Of course, that doesn't mean everybody just gets up and holds forth. That's a different conversation, which social media should address today. But I think we did all that. The first laws to be dismantled were being done. Moving on to today, I think it's a critical concern that today's democracy is now at loggerheads with, which is the ability to understand freedom as a public good is critical for governments that supervise it, that are holding power, even if it's only office, but they're certainly holding that, and they need to be able to see that criticism is a public right. Even when you stand up and criticize me, it is your right. And we still as governments tended to see that. The ground is shifting today. The ground is shifting today even in democracies, and they're becoming more and more illiberal as opposed to open and fostering open societies. It is this function that is fostering open societies, not government. And that is what governments need to do across the world, which is why I was speaking to Shahid earlier. and saying this is a function of populism,
Yep.
the populist wave in the world.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to lead to.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about critical crises, and to me, the idea that populism is on the rise everywhere, various kinds of populism, all kinds, you know, whether it's left-wing, liberal, or whatever you want to call it, it's populism. But what populism, in my mind, does, principally, it diverts attention from what are the real problems and the real issues. It just completely takes people's attention away from that, and they're so engaged with the populist rhetoric that they forget what are the real issues that are confronting them. And I think that brings us into what we're trying to talk about today, or hoping to talk about. For example, in my mind, one of the biggest issues confronting all societies, and Pakistan in particular in many ways, is the climate crisis. And yet, all populist leaders seem to deny the climate crisis, deny climate change, and rather than talk about climate change in a general sense, we can talk about it in the case of Pakistan in terms of, and I'll just throw out a few ideas. We have extreme weather conditions that affect us disproportionately than it does many other countries. We have problems with water security. We have problems with food security. These are all impacted by that. We have to have disaster preparedness. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Let's engage with that, and we've discussed this in the green room earlier, that contrary to the obsessions you hear daily as part of the daily information and news diet in the news feed, the substantive issues and the crises that are actually hitting Pakistan today and in the very near future, not even the rest of the century, are not at all being discussed. Part of it, the responsibility lies with civil society and the media itself. And here I will distance civil society from the conversation because they're the only ones, for instance, trying to map trends. And for instance, Lahore with its black lungs is being measured by only, air quality is being measured by one or two mechanisms, machines that are 5-kilometer radius, but by civil society measurements. There is an air quality Lahore, air quality Karachi. You're seeing it coming up on Twitter and Facebook and social media, and they are providing what little data Pakistan needs to understand what it is going. Now, just coming back to populism, to explain why this is important. The world over, this is what populists, just so you recognize one when you see one, what do populists do? They campaign on a promise of bringing power to the people. Fair enough, that's what everyone does. But it's to a specific niche, they say, who has not had a voice in government and how governments have been terrible. They're not wrong. And how politics has left out people, etc. When they come to power, this is a distinct pattern you can chart from 2000 or even earlier in the Weimar Republic. You see that they turn against democracy in terms of democratic norms. There's lip service, but they start stripping society of its freedoms. And today you are seeing those freedoms being stripped. You're seeing them in Modi's India in a very, very open way, and I don't want to get into that because there are other sessions doing this. You're seeing them in Pakistan, you're seeing them in Trump's United States, you're seeing them in Bolsonaro's republic, you're seeing them since 2000 in a swing to the right. So the exclusion, and what they do then, secondly, is instead of focusing on the public or people's development agendas and economic agendas of the socio-economic stagnation that perhaps people are feeling, and today it's much more than that, it's more than stagnation. It's a downgrade in your incomes, disposable income and where it goes. So instead of focusing on those problems or engaging the public in those conversations, the daily diet is breathlessly fomenting of hatreds and other divisions in society. They may be political. In India, they're broader than that. But there's a daily discussion not of what is important, not of what is looming, and where action needs to be taken. And when Shahid mentions the climate crisis, it's a particular pet peeve of me, and I want to put to you that this, well, the session could have and should have been, my bad, titled The Age of the Anthropocene. What does the Anthropocene mean? It means this is the century or the age where man, and I won't say woman-made, man-made crises and products and processes are changing the resources we and the future generations will have access to. So our entire age is man-made now. And in this age of the Anthropocene, Pakistan is not equipping itself to cope with the crisis. Now, one little thing, Shahid, before, just take water. The water crisis in Pakistan is actually acute. Are you seeing it on any television channel? Put them on tonight. I challenge you that you'll hear of it. And that's not a political failing, that's a social failing. Pakistan, and these are UN and international multilateral statistics, is ready for crisis as in ground zero. Pakistan will be water at zero at 2025, not 2050, not 60.
Zero groundwater.
Zero water. We will be in systemic drought 5 years from now. And we need to talk about this. We need to talk about why this will be happening, what we can do to mitigate it, how society and governments create frameworks to adapt. This is a very serious crisis. You heard about it in Cape Town or somewhere in Africa,
yes,
in South Africa. It's distant from us. So climate stress, rather trauma for Pakistan, is not some distant science, no matter what President Trump says. It's not some conspiracy to shut down big business. It is here and now, and it is what we call a clear and present danger at your doorsteps, in your bathrooms, and here, because we have an elite capture of the conversation, let's face it, the underprivileged are not here. But it is our responsibility as Pakistan's privileged and educated people, those who can all read, to engage governments and each other, as well as communities, in strong public conversations that guide and pressure governments to make policy, to execute that policy, and make the connections with the people of Pakistan. Because we are entitled, all of us, especially the generation Z, which how much of Pakistan is under 30? 60%.
Oh, 50%.
60% of Pakistan is under 30. We're not an aging population.
Under 32, I think it's over 60%.
35 to 30. But it's a hugely, it's a big demographic, and I want to also talk about population.
We'll talk about that.
It's not something you'll see
That's
on the news.
Yes.
And it's going to impact my life, your life, and the bottom of the social pyramid that we seek to represent at some level.
And you mentioned the water crisis, which is acute, and groundwater being zero in the next 5 or so many years. We have this water security issue. We've got floods that occur every so often, which just worsens the whole situation. It all leads to a problem of food security. There's not enough food to feed the people. And the population, we're going to talk about demographics in a while, but the population is not slowing down. We are close to a couple of 100 million by now. I mean, nobody's counting it properly anyway. So we don't really even know what the population is. The other thing that one tends to forget when we look at extreme weather conditions or disasters and so on, it has a disproportionate impact on women, which we all seem to ignore. Everything that happens, every disaster that takes place, women suffer disproportionately. It's never mentioned. It's not even talked about. And women have to bear the brunt of all of that. So, we have to deal with women's issues. And the women's issues, it could be a whole session. We could spend hours doing that.
Definitely.
Not just girl children, and the issues that affect them. We've got this whole issue of the laws that are being devised or developed or invented or whatever, or dug up from ancient times to deal with women's issues today. That's another looming problem that nobody seems to talk about. And again, the only people who probably are civil society.
Except a few lawmakers.
And a few lawmakers, yes. But
who are part of civil society.
yes, but also lonely voices.
Lonely voices.
And you know, they're sort of, their voices are lost in the cacophony of all the other noise that's happening. We've already mentioned some of those, so maybe we can talk a little bit about the women's issues.
So speaking of voices and women, obviously favorite soapbox, but you know, I'm sorry, I think women are also disproportionately speaking out. So no, our voices are not getting lost. We are not victims. I'm in a position of leadership in one part of the parliament, and we now have a child marriage restraint bill, which, for instance, may seem very boring, and what does it matter? It matters, because women, the first fundamental right a woman has to choose is the right to her own body and to make decisions about it. Are we thinking about that? Here, there is, in Punjab, you have a law that says children are to be, there's no definition of childhood, for instance, in Pakistan. Forget that. What we seek to do is say that women must make choices and marry responsibly at an age when they are mature or they're adults. So I have defined adulthood like international criteria at 18. Women should not be forced to marry under that age. And do you know how many women are dying every 2 hours in maternal mortality in Pakistan? You need to be shocked and awed by these statistics. Every 2 hours, a woman is dying in Pakistan giving childbirth because she is too young. She was married off as a child bride. And these things matter. We have fought all our lives for, and I want to come back to the thread that women are the bearers of water in agricultural society, communities, even in urban society, the long lines, they're transporting water. So no, even in disasters, they are facing, if you go to any camp, refugee camp, women are on the front lines of that. But women in agricultural areas are being paid working 67% are not being paid. Their work is not being counted. So that's none of us. That's none of us. We have the voices, our work is being documented, it's being counted. Our job is to look most unglamorously at the unseen woman. And 60%, segueing into that, 60% of Pakistan at this point is food insecure. Now this is a trend line that's been growing. With the drought that's looming, just think of that. With the drought that's looming, and the drought is as bad already, Pakistan is at the epicenter of a global famine predicted by 2050. A global famine predicted by 2050. Pakistan is at the acute epicenter for various reasons. We, for instance, are, and water, population, poverty all ties into it. How you use water, how you use your resources, how you harvest your grain, what you export as virtual water. We export a lot of food grains and wheat, rice, for instance, and they consume 85% of the water. So that's being sent out as virtual water. We need to think about these things. And coming back to that famine that I was speaking about, 26 districts already in lower riparian Pakistan, Balochistan and Sindh, are already in formal drought. But there is no elite capture. Elite capture of conversations just leaves that out. So that is why we're taking this opportunity in this good place. And there will be more to follow, because another reason, because we're using our groundwater very irresponsibly, there's no policy thought, there's no public conversation, there's no advertisements telling you how to use your water. There just may be some random Twitter feeds and some think tanks like Jinnah Institute and others putting out, and there are some very big ones putting out the policy warnings, including the World Bank. But what are we doing? We, Pakistanis, all of us, are the world's highest net users of water per capita according to all indices. We use our water intensity rate, it's called the water intensity rate. Pakistan, more than any country in the world, uses water per capita more than anybody else. So each person in the GDP lineup is using, have you heard this? No, I'm sure not, because this is something to really be alarmed about. It's not just governments, it's us. Did you know that eating meat adds to that? I eat meat, I'm not saying that one shouldn't, but the meat industry, which is a big one in Pakistan, and I'm sure I'll get phone calls from the meat industry lobbyists tomorrow, is one of the largest consumers globally of water and of your carbon footprint. Why? Bigger than oil, bigger than big oil. Did you know that? No.
Yes, exactly.
Most people don't, and because no one is bringing this to you.
No one talks about it.
So we need to think about these things.
And you know, when you say we are the biggest users per capita of water, people kind of wonder, what are we using it for? Because we don't wash that often, quite frankly. So I really don't know where the water is being wasted. It's being wasted on things like this. There's a lot of leakages of water. I mean, the whole agricultural system has like 30 to 40% leakages.
The tube wells.
The tube wells. And, you know, when I was an academic in an earlier life, 30 some years ago, we did studies on this. And at that time, things were bad and acute.
No one's studying it now.
So it's obviously far worse today. We talked about, you know, the standardization of women's work and the accreditation of women's work in our national statistics. We tried to come up with ideas 35 years ago on how to incorporate that in our national statistics. Nothing's happened. Today, as you said, 67% of women's work is not documented. It's not accounted for. And so, you know, we have nothing that's happening and nothing seems to be happening. Part of the reason we've already talked about, because the issues are being diverted. I mean, the issues that people are bothered about is who did what to whom, etc., small stuff, and giving power back to the people, bringing about change. We don't know what kind of change they're talking about, all these populist leaders, because the change that we've seen hasn't done the common man or the common woman, the common person, really any good. We are still suffering. We have taxes today that are way higher than anybody else, disproportionately higher on certain income levels than on others. We have unemployment, we've got joblessness, we have all kinds of issues, and yet we are becoming more and more dependent on aid and all of that stuff. So, you know, we keep going back to the IMF every few years. As an economist, it's, you know, being sort of, on the one hand, heartening, yes, we've got a lifeline again, but it's also terribly disheartening that we have no other solutions at our disposal. I was looking at some statistics the other day, which someone had sent me, and I verified them. Inflation is at an all-time high in this country.
Food inflation?
Food inflation is ridiculous. It's close to somewhere between 17 and 20%.
Unprecedented.
And then if you look at, it's unprecedented. If you look at rural-urban inflation at over 20%. Now you think to yourself, you know, we, as an economist, let me just intervene, we talk about imports and the fact that the rupee has been devalued. Great. How many of our rural areas are dependent upon food imports? That's not the reason for inflation. What is the reason for inflation? It's essentially mismanagement. So we've got a lot of issues to talk about over here when it comes to things like joblessness.
We talk about population before we leave off.
Oh, no, we won't.
The big trend.
You know, that's why I brought up joblessness, because joblessness is directly related to the demographic time bomb that we are sitting on. You know, we mentioned these numbers.
Using all the words I gave him in the green room. Not fair.
Well, exactly. So, you know, you shouldn't have done that.
I shouldn't have done that. Learning.
No, but the point is that, you know, we threw out these numbers, shock and awe, right, fair enough, but 60% or something like that, some number of that sort is below the age of 32. What's going to happen to all these people?
So yeah, we have, as we discussed, 5 million jobs, or rather 4 million jobs being needed, or 4 million people entering the job market every year, so in 5 years, every 5 years. So that's a lot of jobs to create. Who's going to create those jobs? Usually we expect the private sector to do it, because the public sector is receding in the world. and it's creaky, it's unwieldy, and it becomes a place of great patronage. But I have a strong case too, that's my personal view, that the public sectors in the world need to actually grow up, reform themselves, and provide services to poorer countries, because in poorer countries, public sectors should be providing services and not taxing the poor the way the private sector prices utilities, right? It's an unpopular argument, but even everywhere now they're discussing for economies that are open, capital controls are needed. We have a lot of hot money bolstering our forex reserves. But it's hot money. When it goes out, there's going to be a disaster. It's not investments in manufacturing that creates jobs. And speaking of that, or to that, manufacturing creates jobs beyond agriculture. Now, agriculture is a big employer, but you're seeing a slump in that with your water moving away and the pressure on it from climate and population. What is the population dynamic while manufacturing today is 10% of our GDP? For 8 straight months, it's slumping. It's only 10% of our GDP. It used to be at 24, and can be more. So my issue with population as something that has a multiplier effect, climate also does. Population has a multiplier effect in our experiences of Pakistan as citizens and the way we use its resources. And the way we're using our resources, Pakistan, there's something called the Malthusian principle or curve. It was supposed to have died down because the world's resources are not where he predicted. He was a great pessimist and he said the world won't be able to feed its population. The population is growing at such rates. Well, guess which country has made Malthus proud of his theory? You're sitting in it, and which country has gone past it, whereas it was predicting a Malthusian crisis or a pressure cooker for it, where population exceeds ability to feed and other resource. That was Bangladesh.
One guess.
That was Bangladesh. It has overcome that crisis. At 900 people per hectare, or sorry, kilometer, it's overcome that crisis. It is not a cotton growing country, Pakistan is, and Bangladesh is far ahead. We are 5th largest cotton growing country in the world, by the way. And Bangladesh, which doesn't grow cotton, has gone far ahead of exporting it with great value addition, not the grey cloth we're sending out and maybe the towels, but it's enhanced its and leverage up its manufacturing base, and it has dealt with this basket case population, the thing that was making Bangladesh the basket case of the world. You remember all that? Anybody who's over 30 will remember that. And there they are today. The taka is stronger than the rupee. They're exporting the cotton-based goods with great value addition, more than us.
Population growth rate is way lower than us.
So to me, the most impressive ambition it has achieved, actually set the goal and gone for judicious policy execution. They've involved their religious right, which means the fatwas are going out against population growth. They have increased contraceptive prevalence, and they don't even have the advantage of Pakistan's women primary health backbone who go from door to door to this day. Again, a program that has not been given the scaling up it deserved. It's called the Lady Health Workers of Pakistan, who provide reproductive health door to door in villages and households that are vulnerable. And not in theory, they're still there. They've been scaled down. They're not in theory. They, my dear, are the backbone of your endangered and highly vulnerable and brave polio vaccination program.
And also women's health, rural women's health in particular.
Rural women's health is addressed entirely by, and there's a high prevalence of that. So despite our having these programs that came from some good politics and some policy view, which incidentally the multilateral sector did not want us to invest in.
Exactly.
But we continued. I mean, Shahnaz Waziri was telling me the other day, she said, we just said, no, we're going to do this. And right now, that's what you have of your creaky reproductive health, that's what's left. So we need to scale it up and look at what other countries are doing to what looks like a socially and politically impossible to execute as policy problem. It's clearly not. It's clearly not. And if we have every 8 minutes, a child being birthed in Pakistan, and families with 6 and families with 7, especially in urban and semi-urban areas. And incidentally, Pakistan is putting pressure on its urban economy because we are also the fastest urbanizing country in all of South Asia, ahead of India, ahead of Bangladesh. So people are migrating from landlessness, land hunger, joblessness in the rural economies, less water, drought. They're migrating to these great big cities where the periphery or the peri-urban areas don't have either the sanitation or the municipal services to support them. So really, it's a perfect storm you're looking at. And I want to raise this as an issue of critical concern. And Shahid is rightly mentioning how we are in a boom and bust cycle constantly with, say, the IMF or our economy. I don't know when the boom happened. It was just during the wheat crops being good. But it's a relative boom. I was asking him this morning, what is obsessing me, and I've been mostly living on the edge, not these issues, on foreign policy. So I used to get told off every single day as ambassador. Oh, the Haqqanis, Madam Ambassador, the Haqqanis are doing everything, are fomenting a series of spectacular attacks in Afghanistan, and they are the reason. And so lots of people became an echo chamber for that. And I used to say, well, you're running one of the largest drone programs in Afghanistan right now, and against our wishes in Pakistan also. You haven't managed to find the guy you're looking for? You're completely triangulated on the GPS. What's going on? There was no answer. I said, well, if there's no answer and that's not your priority, because you want us to engage them in a conversation, at the same time you bash us publicly. And why I'm saying this is because a country that doesn't pay its bills can't have a sovereign foreign policy, or any policy for that matter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And today, day before yesterday, I said to Shahid, look at this, sanitized to say, Sirajuddin Haqqani says, what I want as a Taliban. It's in the front page of the New York Times. Can any one of you say what I want for Pakistan, this great pivotal country? No, you're not going to get that space. So they're all sanitized. But what are we telling? What are we able to do about it? We need to go to the IMF for the 24th time. Yes, what we need to do is we need to go to the FATF. We need to keep the multilateral the community engaged, which we should anyway. But the point is, we are not paying our taxes. And when we speak to the IMF, they're like, Madam, but the tax rate has to be increased, which is a few days ago.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, but what we are doing, and I don't blame them. This is for the government to act as a filter between multilaterals and us. We need to tell them, you can't keep on imposing taxes on the bottom of the pyramid.
You're right.
Who is paying income tax in Pakistan? 1%. This 1%, maybe the top industrialists, those who can be deducted as source, me, my husband, you. The rest are being taxed through regressive and other sales taxes, which means the kilo of rice that you buy and perhaps my driver buys is the same. We are paying the same money, so he's being taxed more than I am. That's where the taxes are going. But 50% of Pakistan is now the service sector. The doctors, the lawyers, all in the room, I'm sure will be angry. I'm sure they pay their taxes, but the jewelers, all of that, there's a huge service. The tuition centers, who's documenting them and where are they paying their taxes? Unless, like the Mughal Empire could not pay for itself, you can't pay for yourself, you will have to consider
rely on
state
other sources.
Yeah.
No, and not only that, but not only are the taxes not being paid by the right people, but the only way they seem to have of collecting taxes is through indirect means. So they'll tax your phone, they'll tax this, they'll tax whatever. Catch as catch can. Small anecdote, I mean, a couple of years back, I was talking to a very, very rich industrialist in this country, and I had the audacity to ask him if he was contributing anything back to the country. And I hate to say this, but you know what his response was? Why should I?
I was there.
Why should I?
Why should I? Can you beat that?
This country has given me nothing. And of course, being myself, I said, your country has given you everything you have. You are one of the richest men in this country, and yet you have the audacity to say that this country has given you nothing. But he felt entitled enough and privileged enough to say, I'm not giving anything back to this country because this country has given me nothing. I have made everything from my own blood, sweat, and tears. Not true, but that's how a lot of people who should be paying taxes believe.
Are not.
And that's what they think. You talked about the Malthusian crisis. Let's go back to that a little. I mean, just a number which we talked about earlier, and really you probably gave me the numbers, so I'm going to use it again. I think our growth rate is 2%, our population rate is 2.4%. You do the math. Don't you think we're heading for a crisis?
Where Malthus's dream come true?
Dream come true. I mean, our population is growing at a faster rate than our economy is.
So the economic contagion is very clear.
Yes.
It's right here.
And it's not going to improve. I saw a headline, which again, I think you showed it to me.
I showed you this morning.
Yes, and I hate to bring this because we don't want this to become political and, a sort of a tutu man who said what. But the headline said, we are out of the economic crisis. I think they forgot the second part of it, which is what I said. We have now entered economic disaster. Okay? So, and I said that to Sherry. I said, well, they've left the second half of the sentence out.
No, the second half was a few days ago. It said we'll take money from the gold we get from Reko Dik, which are mines in Balochistan, which is a contractual mission that is under severe international arbitration,
Exactly.
and we have to pay money to the point of $5.8 billion, the same as the IMF program.
It's a nightmare. The Reko Dik is a nightmare. Yes. So anyway, so we are sitting on a Malthusian, and we are living the Malthusian nightmare. We're sitting on a demographic time bomb. We have more and more women that are underprivileged, don't have anything going for them. We have laws that are discriminating against them, discriminating against the poor, discriminating against the underprivileged, and yet no one is talking about these issues. These are not the issues. The issues are still corruption. Fine.
I think that's a valid, valid public discussion. Why?
No, it's a very valid public discussion.
It is.
I agree.
I'll tell you why, because there's a rot at the heart, systemic rot at the heart of government.
And the thing is, it's not corruption. The word should not be corruption. It's basically a governance issue.
Big governance failure.
Big governance failure. And, but that's the only crisis, it appears, that is in the minds of most people. That's all that seems to engage them. We have myriad other problems. Where are all those being discussed?
No, I think we have a series of clear and present risks. They're beyond they're crisis markers that are blipping on policymakers' radar screens. They're being serially ignored. And communities and civil society, which has really shifted public conversations in the Zia years, in the most difficult years, right? I mean, the media. We need to do that.
Let's talk about civil society, because I think that's a really important area, because, we've talked about critical concerns and critical problems and issues. We haven't really talked about what some of the solutions might be. I don't think we have all the answers. I certainly don't.
You can't have a plastic bottle here.
Yes, exactly.
No, you can't.
Right.
I don't allow it in Senate.
For example.
I have a glass bottle.
Yes.
It's tougher to carry around.
That's a glass
It's tougher to carry around.
I know.
No, but communities need to address this. It's cheaper to have a plastic bottle. They're easier to carry around.
No,
they're light. But you need to come up with solutions
let me give you another little bit of statistic which most people don't seem to understand. This is what, 550 ml or whatever it is?
Yeah,
To produce the plastic bottle, you need about 500 ml of water. So to produce this plastic bottle, you have wasted 500 ml of water.
And this isn't biodegradable.
Yes.
The bigger bottle that feeds your...
To give somebody 50 ml of water, you wasted 500 ml of water, because that's what it takes to make plastic. And yet we all love plastic because it's disposable, you drink it, you throw it away or whatever.
So Turkish Airlines, pointlessly segueing into something that my mind connected to, you do small things, is running an advertisement, because of course it's got the lovely Bosphorus there, and it's showing what happened to the plastic thrown into the ocean by three, young girls and boys, thoughtlessly. We all do thoughtless things. But they then showed at the bottom of the ocean what happened to that plastic, what it was doing to marine life, how it was choking Istanbul and Turkey's potential ecosystem, and what that critical mass did to even the next 10 years. So I think we need to think like that and appeal to people's here and now that when we make a thoughtless action, there are consequences. These shouldn't be unforeseen, unintended. We need to bring intentionality to our actions and not say, well, that's for someone else to do. When I preach climate change, I have to make the difficult transition to glass in my office and in my home. It's a difficult transition, but you have to make it. There's 2 young people from Jinnah Institute. They took it up immediately, and we are doing it. It can be the same expense if you create the infrastructure, and the old economy did. When there were no plastic bottles, there were the cloth shopping bags, and there were these bottles you carried around. So we can do it again, surely. Some of the older ways are worth revisiting, but it's always some abstraction. Yes, somebody else will do that. No, like every woman will tell you, the politics is about the personal. Whatever decisions you make at home are political decisions. Who has power in the home? Hello, husband. And who doesn't is very important. People who fight for women's rights often exceed them at home. You can't do that. You have to have some integrity of linearity of thought.
Another little bit of information. You mentioned Bangladesh earlier. All of Bangladesh was being choked by plastic bags. It was. It's one of the few countries probably the only country in South Asia that has completely banned plastic bags. You do not find any plastic anywhere in Bangladesh now. You go shopping, you have to have a paper bag or you carry your own cloth bag. Yeah. We haven't even thought about something like that over here.
No.
Yeah.
And we haven't, Shahid, 1 second talked about the challenge posed by rising temperatures. Okay, so it's gone to 1.9 Fahrenheit in the last 19th century and then suddenly shot up to 2 points. What's happening in Pakistan? If I'm exaggerating this crisis to you to make a point, you can check what was the largest recorded city or town in the world last year, the hottest. It was Jacobabad in Pakistan. What is the largest, the highest heat recorded temperature anywhere in the world? It was in Pakistan. This last recorded year, it was Turbat. So, Sindh and Balochistan and all those across, as the Indus comes down, this will happen. It's already beginning in North Punjab. It's going to happen to other areas. And we need to start thinking about how to mitigate these, particularly Lahoris. As I drove here, I was late. I want to say this. I was late coming here because I wanted to attend a climate change standing committee and be witness to the helplessness of lawmakers as bureaucracy, one after another, just says, oh, the report is still forthcoming. 4 weeks later, they can't tell us why there isn't a landfill of some use near Islamabad, things like that. But I've created a climate change caucus in Senate, which means everybody volunteers across party lines.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that.
No, that's fine.
She's just started the climate
It's voluntary. People come to send, and we called Rafe Alam from Lahore, and we said, please come here. He, free of charge, arrived and gave us a lecture, sensitized us, created the policy literacy, the vocabulary for understanding it, because it's a science. Yet it's very, very clear to our, near to our lives, at our doorsteps. And, he was saying that the smog and fog are 2 different things. You all know that. Lahore knows that. But on my way from that caucus meeting to on the motorway, I saw, because it was daytime, I could see several factories and kilns emitting black fumes. Most of those had already come up in the meeting, and there was a big fight over it, that most of them are actually brick kilns. The big polluters are cement and steel and fertilizer, which are being, by the way, taxed heavily and penalized, but certainly not penalized like they should. These kilns were emitting black fumes in patches all over that motorway. And I'd already mentioned it. I filmed it and I put it on my Instagram and Twitter. I already put it into the committee, and I said, but you promised us, the cabinet said that we would provide you need a zigzag technology to to clean the fuel from these kilns. You can't put thousands of people out of jobs, so you need the zigzag technology to clean the fuels. That was promised, I don't know, 8 months ago. There is still no meeting, for instance, of the Climate Policy Council. There is a federal one with all the representatives of the provinces. And we've forgotten to mention that Pakistan is now only functioning as a strong federation, but the federation, the provinces are not coming together in any one place on key issues like the Climate Change Council or the water policy. No, we are functioning back again as a one unit. And you know, for those who haven't read the history or experienced how traumatic it was, it led to Bangladesh. So we need to think of the politics of these things also, and how these daily political microaggressions against the federal structure, which means each province is very different. We are not homogeneous. I mean, Bangladesh is homogeneous culturally. They speak one language and they have one culture. We are made up many units of a whole. And the sum of our parts is not being governed as a devolved federation. I was telling Shahid, I'm appalled at, and it's happening across governments, it's getting worse every time instead of getting better. Look, people have to understand, ministers make plans, make ideas, they follow them up like crazy. And intrusive ministers and obsessed ministers do, governments do. But like the British system, the bureaucracy runs Pakistan. You need to know this. The bureaucracy runs Pakistan. The civil service runs Pakistan's day-to-day service delivery, not to you and me. And when we try to make those interventions, you literally have to become what I call a political 007 to figure out, okay, that's where the file went, and that's what I'm being advised is not necessarily correct. I can pursue this whole business of zigzag technology. But there is this miasma of inaction, and that is inspired by leadership. But if leadership is not going to push for real issues to be tackled aggressively, then, well, guys, we all will have to do it.
You know, you're talking about plans that get made but don't get put into action.
No.
32 years ago it was that I worked with the World Conservation Union on a conservation environment plan for Pakistan, a long-term conservation environment plan. We don't hear of it at all. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if it was ever implemented. I don't know if anything was ever done about it. And there were a lot of good people that worked on it. Dr. Parvez Hassan, for example, worked on that. And, you know, people from Lahore, people from Karachi, lots of people worked on it.
Yeah.
And nothing came of it because I think, as you said, the civil service maybe was given other priorities or whatever it was. Which brings me again to something we've touched upon briefly, is
it's
the role of...
in my watch. Oh my God.
Sorry, good God. The role of civil society. Something.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think
So,
maybe people
by
might
the way,
want to talk.
you know, we're going to open up just for a couple of questions. What we've been talking about is the future of Pakistan. And in my mind, the future of Pakistan belongs to the young of this country, the youth of this country. Frankly, anyone who's my age or over, or maybe even a few years younger, shouldn't really be that bothered about the future of Pakistan simply because we're close to our deathbed.
What about legacy, Shahid?
Well, legacy. No, legacy is fine. But I would really, really like to hear from some of the young people in the audience how they see the problems we've been addressing. If you have
I think
a
we
question,
failed them as a generation.
can you, rather than comments, can you please just ask a question? Something very specific to Sherry in particular. There's a young man over there. Udhar dijiyega.
No front row person.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aisha. And I have a question for you. Would you have spoken the same way about the problems of Pakistan if you were in power?
Yes, I did resign and I spoke about them. That is why I resigned.
And another one.
Of course, I did speak about them. Read what I've written.
I'm kind of...
These are systemic issues. They're not germane to one political government. I hope you understood that.
Yes.
But then, do you have any solutions?
Sorry?
Solutions, any solutions?
Which particular one do you want to focus on?
Well, I'd just like to say that it is kind of, I feel that when such things are to be discussed, they should be discussed with solutions, especially from public representatives like you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to talk about? Because there are.
Because all of them,
For
you
example,
are
name one.
responsible.
Name one so we can narrow it down.
For
This
example,
business
the
of
climate-
addressing everything to everything doesn't work.
I
right?
meant the climate change.
Okay, Pakistan
right,
is
fine.
now the
Thank you.
fifth largest,
Thank
fifth
you.
most exposed country to climate.
Thank you.
No,
thank you.
yeah, okay.
Can I just answer this
Yes,
quick one?
yeah, take
And
them.
at a national level, what do we need to do? I've been alluding to it. At a national level, like all countries, which is a federation, you need the Climate
Yeah.
Council to have met. You need to have a climate policy to connect the dots. The climate policy is borrowed from 2013, incidentally from my government, and since you want to talk about those, I don't, and is now sitting there only likely for use and perhaps one or two people being anxious on a calendar of our imminent anxieties. I don't see any movement forward, but that's the first thing you need to do. On that climate, the four subas, the subon ko wahan hona hai, numayandgi hai unki, because the Indus doesn't go across one province, it connects all of Pakistan. Then there are desertification areas, they need to have a voice. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. And there needs to be a water policy. If you want to price water, you will have to discuss it with public representatives and therefore with you. If you want to make and there has to be a clear policy shift, slow one, from water intensive cropping, which is taking, and the meat industry, which is taking up huge amounts of water and your carbon footprint, to crops that can service the fields and our own economy, and there are many of them. There are several good reports on that. It's not inventing the wheel. And at a personal and obviously at the provincial level, we need to look at the effluent going into our river, back into our systems, because that has to mean we have to produce big the plants that process that waste. Already some of it is being done, but Pakistan is producing so much waste that none of its cities or its plants are able to process it. And that's just big, 4-5 big things I'm telling you. And also the provinces need to share data with each other. There is something called telemetry across the Indus.
Yeah,
and that data is notoriously covertized. It's a national security secret. My institute had to buy the data to do a study on it.
Yeah.
And I have to record. Now, at a personal level, you can stop eating meat. You can start investing in your garden. You can build small reservoirs. You can start, as a citizen, working within your community to raise the 5 big issues that worry you about climate action. You can read, you can act.
But
You
have
can-
you
No,
incorporated
excuse me,
them
excuse me,
in
Sorry, we can't have just one
Just,
question.
sorry.
just one question.
Yeah, please.
Just question.
No, please. You've had your question, you've had
sorry
the
to
answer.
interrupt.
This is
Can
not a
we-
dialogue. No, I'd just like to add to that, what you
Just
said.
one question.
Sorry,
Just one-
excuse me.
Some young
We haven't finished. Let me finish. Thank you. There's an enormous amount of information available. A lot of it with academia, a lot of it with civil society, a lot of it with various
Yes.
think tanks. It's not as if solutions do not exist, but all this information has to be collated, gathered, put to some use, and converted into policy, and then from policy into action. So there are solutions to all of the problems we've been talking about. Not complete solutions, not final solutions, but there are solutions, and you have to
Shahid,
make
may
a
I
start.
add that functioning democracies with robust civil societies don't wait passively in their seats or their comfortable beds for governments and the state to filter down not just policy, but also action.
Yes.
Just one question.
Greta Thunberg is my hero. I will, if she was here, I will be standing in her group, and and young people actually did a Climate Friday, Action on Friday all over Pakistan, inspired by her. There were lots of young people building green economies, small green economies of scale, making themselves literate, making their societies literate. The ministers were there, we were all there. We had a synergy where we felt that we were pressuring each other for change. So no, democracies don't function like authoritarian governments. They don't send dictates down and then people consume them. Democracy is not a consumable thing. We have to learn to use it. The more you create demand for it and use it, the better it's serviced.
Right.
Yeah, just was one question from here.
Sorry, where?
Yeah, here, sir.
Okay.
Here, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm actually quite a fan of you, as you said, things about environment and climate change. I myself, I'm a PhD in environmental sciences and...
Question, please.
I am a university professor, but the thing is that like everyone cannot come to universities and start understanding environment and stuff. What you are saying is okay, but since you are an advocate of media independence and at the same time you talked about environment, the thing is that yes, we all favor freedom of speech, but the media is not playing its role positively. I mean, if you give them independence, they shall be educating people.
What's your question, young man?
My question is that since you are an advocate of media's independence and freedom of speech, you can use their role to and tell them to educate public in general about environment and these things. We are talking about solutions now. Solutions.
No, hold on. You're making a speech, sir. Is there a question?
A question is that when she was, when she had power and when she did make media independent, why did not she educate media as well?
Why didn't I fix everything, right?
No,
Good
no,
question.
just to,
Question.
just to put
Excellent.
education.
I should have fixed Pakistan that year.
The media must be doing what you are doing. Like you are an individual.
No, media is capital.
Excuse me.
It's led by the
You've had your
private
say.
sector.
Can you please give the mic back now?
I
Please.
can't answer
Thank
for
you.
the media and their
No,
choices.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The question is reasonably valid. That the question should be more general. Why do we not educate the media? Yeah, I think that's the question. Why do we not educate?
Yeah.
And hold on. But there are a lot of problems.
Signs of a good discussion. People are excited.
It's a very big problem, educating the media. The media today is not just what we think of as print media or broadcast media. We've got social media, we've got digital media, we've got media that's in the hands of people who are completely, utterly uneducated. And I don't mean illiterate people, I mean uneducated people who have no idea what it is that they're putting out there. They'll read something, they'll see something. How do you educate an entire population? We have to do something about that. So it's a bigger issue than just the media.
Yeah, well, the media is in nobody's hands and they're not planning to be, number one. That's a good thing. The media is in nobody's hands and they're not planning to be. They're fighting a very hard fight, especially the working journalists on the field who are not paid salaries anymore. So, yes, but the media amplifies voices. Here's what you can do. I can't dictate to the media. I couldn't as a minister. I don't believe in that, and I'm not about to start doing that. I can certainly advise and entreat, certainly. I entreat you also, importune you rather, to pick up your smartphone. I'm sure you have one, and actually operationalize your,
Thoughts.
Yes. Your town hall activism is important. Operationalize it. Say, build a website or build a Twitter account that suggests that I'll follow it. Build a Twitter account that says media for climate action. Just do it. What's to stop you? You have freedoms and entitlements that the last century did not have. Learn to use them.
And learn to use them for betterment and for the good of society. Don't learn to use them just to criticize and, for social reasons.
I'm getting that sign.
Yeah, I think we're getting that sign. Yeah, we're getting that sign.
I blame it all on my moderator who didn't cut me off before and give you more questions.
No, I can't possibly cut you off. Well,
thank you
very much, Sherry. Thanks very much. Thanks to the audience. Thanks for being here for us.